Welcome back to the Drive Home Reviews podcast, where I review the movies I have just seen as I am driving home from the theater. And, okay, this is one of those movies that's a little hard to talk about because the way it is told, the way in which the story is laid out, means that to talk about it, you have to kind of talk about the entirety of it. Well, you know, some movies you can hit the big points and leave a lot of the details, you know, for people to experience for themselves. But this one is not structured that way. To review this movie, in other words, I have to review the twist or the big secret, which the movie itself gives away, you know, within the first 30 to 40 minutes or so. But this, by the nature of this movie and what it's trying to do, I feel like if I don't put up a spoiler warning, I might rob people of a chance to experience something that could mean a lot to them. So consider yourself under spoiler warnings. I'm putting it up.
Spoiler alert!
Spoiler alert.
Maybe say spoiler before you give away the end of a movie, okay?
Okay, so we have that. So let's do our best to talk about Life of Chuck. You know, in a way, I think that maybe putting up the spoiler warning is maybe one of the nicest things I could have done. Maybe spoiling it for you is actually a good thing, because that means you going into it already knowing what's going on may help you enjoy the movie a little bit more, as opposed to kind of the experience I had watching it. So this is a story that is told in reverse. It's a non-linear narrative wherein we witness the life of Chuck, as the title implies. So the movie begins with Chuck's death, but it represents his death in a way that won't become clear until later in the film. So when the movie opens, we are in a world very much like ours, where the world is slowly falling apart. The internet stops working. A giant earthquake rips California away from the rest of the country. Every country on Earth is experiencing natural disasters. Suicide rates are up. Just everything is falling apart, and you're watching it happen in real time. And our story focuses on these two people, a divorced couple, who are both kind of trying to hold body and soul together. And as things fade and as things are slowly disintegrating, you keep seeing these billboards and things that say, "Thank you, Chuck, for 39 years. It's the only thing that keeps coming through on the television. It's the only thing that you hear on the radio. You suddenly see images of it. Karen Gillan plays one of the couple, and she's a nurse, and the hospital is empty because all the doctors have quit, just because there's no point, and yet all the heart monitors in the place are beeping, and you can probably get where this is going. So as it turns out, this world that we're watching is a representation of Chuck's mind. And the world ending is his body shutting down as he dies. And when he dies, the world ends. And then we progress back through two other acts. One just kind of detailing a fun day in Chuck's adult life, and then the first act, which is presented as Act 3, but whatever. That takes us back to Chuck's early childhood and then into young adulthood. And over the course of these acts, we start to see things that were represented in the first part of the movie, in this world in his head, and where those came from, where those lessons were learned, where the references come from, and you start to kind of see there's a bit where when Chuck was in school and they were learning about, I think it was Walt Whitman, I believe, I could be wrong. And he has the poem where he says, there are multitudes in my head, and his teacher explains it to him that, as you grow up, every lesson you learn, every fact you take in, every person you meet is all there in your head, and it creates an entire universe inside your head. So that is what is going on. The first act, you're basically seeing all of the things that were in that make-believe world and why they were important to him, why he remembered them, why he remembered the certain people that he remembered, and so on. So it's an interesting way to tell a story. It really is. I do like the way the story is structured. I think you can have a lot of fun with non-linear storytelling, and I've always been fascinated as a creative person. I think I can call myself that. It's always interesting to me, like when I write a play. I'm writing one now, actually. And it's always interesting to me after you've written a play and a few years have passed and you go back and read it and you look at all the things that were influencing your life at that time and all the things that you were trying to express, what metaphors and what language other people used made its way in. And, so that idea of we create whole universes inside of us, populated by all the lessons we've learned and all the people we've met, that's an interesting idea. It really is. I also enjoy the fact, the way this film is structured, I like how the middle act is just a day that Chuck had, a particularly interesting day where this is the part where Tom Hiddleston comes into it. We'll talk a little bit about that here in a bit, but so he's walking down the street, there's a street performer playing the drums, and just for reasons that you'll kind of connect to later, he just stops and starts to dance. And he pulls a young lady out of the crowd whose boyfriend just broke up with her, and she's having a shit day, and they dance together. And it's this really nice, beautiful, kind of the magic of everyday life kind of things. Take stock of the extraordinary. Don't just pass by it. It's okay to lead an ordinary life, but it's the little things you do, dancing on the street with a stranger, that make a life extraordinary. I like that. I think that's a fascinating thing, and I think it is something that we tend to forget, and it's good to remember. So I like that aspect of the story. I've also got to say that if I was an actor in Hollywood right now, one of the actors in this movie, and this script came across my desk, I can see why you'd want to do it. I can definitely see it, especially the real standouts of this film. There are 5 standouts in this movie. It's a big cast, and there's a lot of great talent in it. But there are 5 people who really make this movie special. So first of all, the movie says it stars Tom Hiddleston as Chuck. And yes, he does appear as Chuck, but I don't think it stars him as Chuck. That goes to the 2 young men playing him in his youth and as a young man. That's Benjamin Pejak, I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, and Jacob Tremblay. Those guys star as Chuck. They play Chuck for the longest amount of time. They play him for the most significant portions of his life. And they're the ones who provide the emotional underpinnings of everything. We're with them the longest. And I think they deserve that acknowledgement of playing Chuck. No offense to Tom Hiddleston, who I love and is a great actor, but this isn't his movie, it's theirs. It's solidly their movie. Also, big ups to Nick Offerman, who plays the narrator, who is it was exactly that, just this voice coming out and giving us backstory and all this throughout the entirety of the film. He's not the voice that you would think of to narrate this kind of more fantastical story. I think the prize for that went to Jim Dale in Pushing Daisies. But Nick Offerman has that kind of low, calming, kind of humorous but kind of serious mix to his voice that I think fit the film very well and helped provide a lot of the underlining for the film. Of course, it is funny that right before I watched this movie, I was watching an episode of The Great North. So when it comes on, all I could hear was Beef Tobin. But I dug him. But the two other MVPs of this are definitely Mark Hamill and Carl Lumbly. So Mark Hamill plays Nick's grandfather, and Carl Lumbly plays an undertaker. And I'm telling you right now, guys, again, if I was one of these actors and this script came across, I get why they jumped at it. They have two of the best monologues in this movie. Two of the best monologues I've heard in a movie in a long time. Like, these are well-written, eloquent, beautiful monologues. Carl Lumbly actually kind of gets to give his twice as a character in Chuck's past, and then as another representation, blending together two monologues in the opening. And they're really great monologues. If you're an actor, that's the whole reason to watch this movie, is watch it for those two monologues and those two performances of those monologues, because they are a masterclass of writing and acting. And damn, Mark Hamill and Carl Lumbly come to play, and they are fucking awesome. I loved their monologues. I was captivated. When you are watching a master perform and do the thing that they've spent their life doing, and that they make it look so fucking easy. And they both do. I cannot praise their performances enough. So yeah, definitely that's a reason alone to watch this movie. So, with all that being true, and those facts being true, why then do I have a hard time with this movie? Why do I not feel life affirmed? That's how this movie was marketed, in the little bit of marketing it had, which I can understand it's a very difficult kind of film to market. But the way it came across, it's like It's a Wonderful Life. And yeah, there are elements of that. But this film, I didn't finish watching it and feel really good. I felt depressed and sad and just drained of it. And I think, if I had to put a finger on it, I think my biggest problem with it is the structure. I appreciate why they did it, and certain amounts of it worked, but the problem is it works too well. So the opening of this movie is the world ending, is Chuck dying. And the world in his head ending is depicted very, very realistically. One might say too realistically. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't think I'm dropping a bomb on you when I tell you that we are living in what feels like the end times. The world is fucked, and it is fucked worse than I feel it has ever been fucked before. You know, from literal supervillains being elected to president, to natural disasters that nobody seems to care about, to civil unrest that nobody seems to care about. You know, it really does feel like the world is falling apart around us. And that for a lot of us, we really do feel like helpless observers who can do what we can, but in the end, if the world decides it's going to end, there's not a lot we can do about it. And that's a very helpless and scary feeling. So if there was ever a time for an uplifting, life-affirming moment, a movie that reminds us of the beauty of existence, this would have been a good time for it. But that opening is too realistic. It's too heart-wrenching. It is too disturbing. And too closely tied to the reality that we face every day. And I know for a fact, I can tell you just from watching it, that that's what they were trying to go for. They were trying to work backwards and see how ugly everything is, but look at the beauty. And I get that, but okay, let me try to give you a couple examples here. I think the ultimate life-affirming movie is It's a Wonderful Life. I think most people would agree with that. And how does It's a Wonderful Life begin? It begins with a beautiful snow-covered town, people praying to God to help somebody, which is, you know, a selfless thing to do. And then our narrative framing device are these two heavenly bodies recounting the life of George Bailey in what could be considered almost a little bit of a comical, light-hearted way. And make no mistake, It's a Wonderful Life gets fucking dark. You know, it gets harsh. Starting with Mr. Gower slapping George in the ear and making his ear bleed. That was hardcore for the time. But the introduction that the movie gave us is one of comfort and one of it's okay. So even when we get into the nightmare Twilight Zone section of the movie where George is walking around in his definition of hell, we, the audience, are also unnerved, but we know in our hearts that it's going to be okay because the movie let us know up front. Same thing, another great life-affirming movie, one that I really love, Big Fish, which begins with whimsical music and a father telling a tall tale about catching a big fish. And even though it's presented from the son's perspective of being very dismissive and very, angry with his father for always kind of upstaging him and all of this, the way it's shot and the way the story is told is giving us the feeling that, again, things are going to be okay. And things are going to, that these whimsical stories are beautiful, and that when the end happens, even though probably the hardest thing that could ever happen to somebody happens, you still have these beautiful things to hold on to. Both of these movies set us up by saying it's okay. We're going to show you dark things. Bad things are going to happen. But it's going to be safe. It's okay. This movie does not. This movie doesn't do that. This movie... And again, I think I can almost say positively that is the goal of it. It's trying to make us sad and uncomfortable and then trying to show us beauty. But at least for me, by the time it gets there, I am too fucking depressed to find the beauty. You know? Yeah. And I really believe, I respect what they were trying to do, and I respect the narrative tool that they used. But I believe that if they had told this story linearly, and maybe as Chuck is growing up, you kind of intersperse it with scenes of this other town and this, you know, the world ending and all of that, and the two things kind of, it's a double plot, and at the end the two things kind of come together and you see where they connected. I think that would have maybe felt more affirming and good and powerful. But for me, I did not leave this feeling happy. Now, at the risk of turning my movie review into my therapy session, but then again, it won't be the first time that I've done that, and I'm pretty sure it won't be the last. Maybe that's just where I'm at mentally. You know, right now in my life, I'm in a decent place. I'm in a new place. I'm in a job that I'm enjoying. I have a new adventure kind of coming out before me, but I can't deny that all that came out of a lot of misery and a lot of heartbreak and a lot of betrayal and a lot of loss. And I'm still grappling with that every day. Every single day. Not a day has gone by where I haven't had at least a moment where those harder feelings aren't present in me. So maybe I'm just not in the headspace to have a movie start with, yeah, everything is shit. And it's just going to get more shit until the world ends. Even if it is coming back around and trying to lift me up. It didn't do that for me, folks. It really didn't. It left me in kind of a worse place than I was. I really felt bad after watching this movie. Really, really bad. And that's with everything good that it did do. And I want to be clear, because I always feel bad when I badmouth something like this, because I applaud finding a new way to tell a story. I applaud not having to be literal about everything. I applaud, and I don't feel like this movie is up its own ass in the way that a lot of other movies I've seen in this kind of vein can be. You know, a lot of movies that are made with different narrative structures or a lot of metaphor, there's a pompousness about them. There is a, you know, I'm so smart and revel in how smart I am kind of ness about them. And this movie doesn't have that. It doesn't have that pompousness. You know what? As I'm sitting here thinking about it, I've given the examples of Big Fish and shit. I'm sure everybody at home is like screaming at the radio. Big Fish and It's a Wonderful Life. Sorry about that. Brain fart. But you know, the movie that this more closely resembles in terms of tone is Citizen Kane, which starts out dour, and then the ending is dour, and it's meant to be dour. And I don't think that's what they were going for. They wanted to start out Citizen Kane and end It's a Wonderful Life. And I don't think it could work. Maybe it can for other people. It couldn't for me. So yeah. And again, there are a lot of great things about this. In particular, those performances that I highlighted. They really did a great job. And I would not be shocked if there was Oscar nominations for Mark Hamill. Carl Lumbly probably wouldn't get one, but he deserves one for his performance in this. But yeah, it's a hard movie to critique, and it's a hard movie to give a final grade to, because it's hard to separate how much of it is what the movie actually did to me and what was already being brought in. But then again, we all bring our personal feelings and history in with us every time we observe a piece of art, and that's going to affect the way we see it. That's why watching a movie or reading a book or looking at a painting when you're a kid is different from looking at it as an adult. So I can only judge it on how I feel right now. So again, hard one to grade. Very hard to grade this one. But my final grade for this one, I'm going to say a B-. And somehow I feel like a B- is being too generous, but I feel like a C+ is too harsh. You know what I mean? I wish there was a letter like in between a B- and a C+ that I could award this movie. And maybe if I decide to go back and rewatch it, I will come at it now that I have knowledge of it and I can view it with the full picture in mind and not kind of in pieces. Maybe that will affect my opinion, and maybe it'll shift one way or the other. I don't know. But the other question is, am I going to want to see it again? Because, oh, real quick before I sign off, you know who else gives a great performance in this? It's a small little part. Matthew Lillard. Matthew Lillard has a small little bit in it, and he is fucking great. Matthew Lillard is just awesome. You know what? I don't think, as when I was younger in the 90s, I didn't give Matthew Lillard a lot of respect, and I regret that now. The same way I didn't give a lot of respect to Keanu Reeves. And both guys are not only good actors, but they're really good people. And the more I've heard about Matthew Lillard as a human being, the more I'm like, this guy is fucking awesome. And he's one of those people you're glad is kind of around and is still working and still showing that he's got some chops. So I'm sorry I didn't mention him earlier, but yeah, Matthew Lillard gives a really great cameo in this. It's really well done. Anyway, but I guess the last word I can say on Life of Chuck is I think it is one of those movies that you should view for yourself and see how it makes you feel. And yeah, and maybe that's the ultimate praise for it, is it's a movie that I would tell people to go and watch and see how it makes them feel in the end. And if they agree with me, or if it touched them in a way it didn't get to me, yeah, I'd be curious to find out. So, but those are my takes on the Life of Chuck. Alrighty, so let's wrap this up. So thank you. Thanks for coming along. Thanks for listening to me ramble and listening to my, again, my confession. Less of a review than a confession now. Thanks for always coming along. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you next time. And as always, drive safe. And I will see you at the movies.